Hello, good evening, and welcome to our Madeleine McCann number 3 talk.
Hi,
Are you
Maureen.
saying something, Lizzie? Hey, oh, you're there. Okay, so I'll hand it over to you, Lizzie.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for being here. Once again, it's really smashing to be able to give you the details from the files that I have found myself, which you won't find anywhere else. But first of all, before we get to that, I want to say a special hi to Kim and Chris. And before I do anything else, I do want to let everybody know about a really great podcast. Now, Mark Selnokonoko from Channel 9 News in Australia did a podcast last year, and it was award-winning. I mean, it was number 1 in the UK, in Australia, and in the States for 3 weeks. I think about 3 weeks. It was so great. And he's got another one coming out, which is called They've Taken Her. So we're going to be watching for that and giving you the links for that. And I absolutely recommend it. And I think Shirley has actually been listening to it just lately. Is that right, Shirley?
Yes, I have. I'm just finished episode 4. And for somebody coming in who doesn't know a lot about this case, this is one of the easiest podcasts that I've listened to. He keeps things he keeps in the direction that he's going, but he does let you know ahead of time, like, you need to pay attention to this, or I'm going to talk about this later. So, and he's just very easy to listen to. And I've already learned like 3 things where I'm like, I did not know that. Had no clue about that. So I definitely recommend the podcast.
Oh, he's great just to listen to his voice. Everybody loves his voice.
Yeah. I mean, it, like I said, he's really easy to listen to. And I'm one of those people that I have thousands of audiobooks. I'm subscribed to tons of podcasts. I listen to a lot of things, and he's definitely one of my favorite. If he decided to narrate a book, I would listen to the book just because he's narrating it.
Yeah, and you know what really intrigued us? We were helping him for a couple of years, but what really intrigued us was the fact that he was one of the only, if not the only, investigative journalist in the media. And he really did report on everything as it really was, as opposed to what the regular mainstream media were reporting. And what I found really sad, actually, is that on his channel, there's a 60-minute documentary based on the German suspect. And may I say, it's one thing that I did watch it, and what it really focuses on is it tells you about what a terrible chap he was, and all of everything that he's done. And I didn't find any link to Maddie there. They're absolutely using him. Not one link that suggests that he was actually involved in Maddie's abduction. Now, it surprised me to see Sandra Felgueras saying what she did, but that's her choice, I guess. But I certainly, Mark does not go along the same lines as the 60-minute documentary, and he is absolutely great. So just wanted to let you know, watch his podcasts. I think there's 10 episodes, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. So anyway, let's go on. Last week we dealt with Saturday to Wednesday, and I explained to you some of the discrepancies that I've discovered by separating all the statements into timelines and comparing them. I don't think anybody else has done that. So what I've found is information that you won't find anywhere else. Now, we're up to Thursday, Excuse me. But before we start, I think Maureen's going to show us a video which gives you, I did this video showing all the locations around the resort so that you have a good idea of where everything was placed. Now, it's probably going to go too fast for you to actually take it in, but you can see that if you ever want to picture anything or see how far one of the places is from the other, I think this video will really help you. So if you could put that on full screen, Maureen, that would be great. Okay, so yeah, there is music, but you can't hear it. So that's basically the different areas in Praia da Luz. They were the main routes. And you can see the Ocean Club, where the Twins crash is, and where Madeleine's crash is. That was Madeleine's crash that she was taken to. And that's the entrance to it on the side. And this is where they would have come every day to take her to the kids club. Lots of people don't realize that there was actually the two groups in one room, and there was approximately 14 children. And there's our Sammy the Snake. Not with Madeleine, but it's from their brochure. So the Twins crash is right next to the tapas. That's the route they would take. It actually surprised me when I saw the high tea area. I wasn't picturing it that way until I actually got these pictures together to realize. And the Millennium is where they went for breakfast or dinner on that first night. And that was the restaurant that they went to that first night. And that's in the Millennium Complex, not in the Ocean Club complex. Okay, thanks, Maureen. So I think during last week we went through Monday to Wednesday, and I think I pointed out a lot of the discrepancies for each day. Now, I know most of you are not going to remember them or kind of get them into perspective, but the point is that on the Tuesday was when the discrepancies really started. And to me, that was an indication when they all contradicted themselves about simple things. That told me they were trying to hide something. And it continued from Tuesday and Wednesday and into Thursday. The point of this is when you realize all these discrepancies, you have to ask yourself why. Now, I think I went over a little bit of Thursday morning, but on Thursday morning, they supposedly awoke to Madeleine claiming that the twins coming to them and claiming that the twins were crying. Now, I wonder if you can put the graphic up for that, Maureen, if you would. I think that's number 4. And although I can't read it, she apparently came to her father and was saying that the twins were crying. This is in their May 4th statements the next day. Kate said that she said that it was the twins crying. Now, on the 10th, they changed it. And Jerry claimed that he went to the mother and said it was Sean and I crying. And then later in September, Kate said that it was both of them, that they came to both of them and said that just Madeleine was crying. What seemed odd is that initially they tell us that Madeleine said the twins were crying on the May the 4th statement. Now, Kate supposedly told Jane and Fiona that she told them that on the Thursday evening. Funnily enough, when Jane and Fiona said in their statements, they didn't say that Kate told them the twins were crying, which was what Kate said in a statement the following day on the 4th, which you would have thought she would have said. They said that Sean and Madeleine were crying. Well, that's what they changed it to on the following week. So it seems that really, did they hear her say that on the Thursday, or did they change it according to what the May 10th statement said? Did Kate and Jerry change it? Kate didn't actually have an interview on the 11th that we know of, but did they change it specifically for some reason, that instead of saying the twins were crying, that it was Sean and Madeleine crying? And it was the second change that Jane and Fiona claim. So that to me tells me something is odd. They should have said the twins were crying if they heard it on the Thursday night. So anyway, that's excuse me, that's the beginning. Now, the next thing is they left for the crash. And this again, and keep in mind, this is the day before the statement. So there's no reason they should have forgotten anything, got anything wrong, but they contradict each other. And this is the day Madeleine went missing. Now, surely they would remember when they left for the crash, which door they walked out of. Now, I just have to double check on this, that I think Jerry claimed that he went out, he let them out through the back door. So here's Kate with the 3 children going down the stairs on her own while Jerry locked the doors and then went out through the front door. Kate claims that they all left through the front door. So why would there be that contradiction? You'd think they'd remember that from the day after. You know, did Kate struggle down the stairs with the children? Or, as she said, go out the front door? And if so, why did Jerry claim she went out the back door? So those two contradictions are absolutely there. So then, once the children were in the creche, Rachel says that she sat with Kate by the pool waiting for Madeleine to come for her tennis lesson. Now this is where it gets really confusing, because we know that Madeleine's group at least played tennis on the Tuesday, but Rachel claims it was the Thursday that she was sat waiting for Madeleine and sat with Kate waiting for Madeleine to arrive. Why would that be? It was the other children's tennis, the Sharks, that were playing on the Thursday. So that doesn't seem right. She also claims that's the last time she saw Madeleine. So is she claiming the last time she saw Madeleine on Thursday, even though Madeleine wasn't playing tennis Thursday? Or had she not seen Madeleine since Tuesday? Definitely some strange oddities there. So Jane and Russell were both at the mini tennis, and it wasn't Madeleine's group that were there. It was the Sharks, and they both recall speaking to this chap called Nigel because he had a camera, and they discussed about how difficult it was to take pictures of the children and how it could be misinterpreted. So during that half an hour, Jane left and went down to the beach, where she met Fiona and David on the way back from windsurfing. Apparently they were both cold and heading back to the apartments to change. Jane arrived at the beach in time to catch her older daughter. Now her older daughter is 3 months younger than Madeleine, and in the same group as Madeleine. And they were getting ready to go back to the creche after their mini sail Thursday morning. She said she took pictures of her daughter, but no mention of Madeleine, and there's no pics available in the files. Jane's statement tells us that Russell went to the beach with her. Now, although, excuse me, Rachel tells us she was at mini tennis on Thursday, there is no mention of her by Russell or Jane. And there was Jez Wilkins' wife, Bridget O'Donnell. She did a blog at one point, and she says in her interview with The Guardian that she saw the children all pink and pretty, but does not specifically mention Madeleine. She also says that Jerry and Kate spent time talking with the tennis coach. Now, none of this really fits with the fact that Kate supposedly played tennis from 9:15 to 10:15 every morning, so she couldn't have been sat with Rachel all morning. And Jerry plays from 10:15 to 11:15, so when Madeleine was playing tennis, he couldn't have been there with them. He would be playing the tennis in the next court. None of it fits. Fiona claims to have been with her by the pool and went to pick up Fiona's youngest daughter in the same room as Madeleine. Now, again, this is what's weird. Kate tells her the apartment to make lunch, and Fiona, and then supposedly joined Fiona to go to pick Madeleine up. Fiona tells us that they left from the recreation area and both went to pick Madeleine and Fiona's daughter up. Then Jerry says that it was him that went to pick Madeleine up. And he remembers it specifically because he took the shortcut. Now, keep in mind, what I try to work on is with the early statements, because that's before they've actually had time to change them. And the early statements are the day after this happened, the last day that Madeleine was in their life. They are trying, first of all, they don't know which door they came out of. Then they don't know which of them picked up Madeleine from the creche at lunchtime. And Catriona, she doesn't know who, or she can't remember who picked Madeleine up. Now, then when it comes to picking up the twins, neither of them appear to know who picks up the twins. Jerry, I think Kate says that she can't remember if it was Jerry. Neither of them appeared to know, and Catriona doesn't know who picked up and who dropped off Madeleine on Thursday. Now that is, to me, unbelievable. On the last day that your daughter is alive, that you cannot remember who picked her up at lunchtime and who dropped her off. And they're all saying different things. I think you can understand why I have that down as a discrepancy. And actually, it becomes more confusing because there are things in the files which are called diagrams. And I believe these are a kind of a police file timeline, little boxes all joined here and there. And although I wouldn't take them as gospel, it does seem that Fiona claims that Madeleine was with her in the afternoon. I mean, there's so many strange things that are being claimed. And then we get to lunchtime after Madeleine's been picked up, and I'm trying to do this from memory, so excuse me if I have to stop and think for a sec. But Madeleine's picked up, and then at 12 or 2:30, I think, somewhere around there, they supposedly go down to the pool which is where the last picture was taken. And we all know how questionable the last picture is. Now, at the same time that the last picture was taken, Rachel and Jane were playing tennis, apparently in the tennis courts right next to the pool. Jane claims that Madeleine was yelling through the fence at them. Rachel not only doesn't mention about Madeleine yelling through the fence, she has mentioned that the last time she saw Madeleine was a couple of hours earlier when she played tennis. So that didn't seem right. And you have to wonder, were they there? Did they really see the McCanns at the pool? Was this something to try and put Madeleine alive at this point? Alive during the last picture? Because if Rachel's saying the last time she saw Madeleine was at tennis, we don't know whether she meant Tuesday or Thursday, because if it was Thursday, she may have seen the Sharks playing. And I can't say for sure, but if she was trying to place Madeleine alive, she wouldn't have known whether Madeleine was in there or not. She saw a tennis game and maybe thought, oh, golly, that's Madeleine's group. I'll say I saw Madeleine there. I don't know. But this is what's going through my mind when I'm looking at all this. So what that means to me is maybe Jane was claiming to have seen Madeleine at the pool, shouting at them to place Madeleine there. Because as you know, I believe something happened to Madeleine. I don't know what, and certainly don't know how, by Tuesday when the discrepancies started. Now, this is something which I don't want anybody to take my word. Well, you can take my word that all these discrepancies come from the files, but you need to think them out for yourself. And, you know, maybe you can come up with some other conclusion. I don't know. But this is where it was taking me. So at this point, after the supposed picture was taken, which very well, in my opinion, could have been taken on the Sunday. And the reason being, it was another nice day. The EXIF data for it could have easily apparently been changed, as opposed to any photoshopping. I think it was probably just taken on the Sunday, and then because Jerry was wearing sunglasses, he on the Tuesday he said he stopped at the shop to pick up sunglasses, and maybe but the reason for that is he's trying to tell everybody that he didn't have sunglasses before Sunday, he had them for Thursday. And that, you know, and if it was taken Sunday, he's trying to change that. Can't express what I hope you understand me on that. So after lunch, they took the children to the creche. Supposedly, let me just see here, at 2:40 approximately, and dropped Madeleine off at 2:50. So as I've put in the, there's a WordPress blog, which I have, this page on it, the sixth title is the holiday timeline, and that's where this information is, and some videos, which I think Carrie may be able to give you a link, but if not, we can let you know. The twins, yeah, so why did Fiona claim, according to the diagrams, that she had the twins in the afternoon? Were the twins at the crash, or is it a story made up to support the last picture, which, as I mentioned, I believe is taken on the Sunday? During the afternoon, apparently Kate and Jerry were able to book a tennis court where they played before Jerry continued playing with one of the other guests. And Kate went for a jog and went down onto the beach. Now, what happened in the afternoon is all of the Tapas 7, without Kate and Jerry, had decided to go to a bar down on the beach called the Paraiso Bar, and they, I think they went swimming or paddling or whatever. And so they were in this bar, and it's confirmed that by CCTV footage that they were all there, just the Tapas 7, not Kate and Jerry or Madeleine. And then what this what this means is that they had separated from them on this afternoon, and it's confirmed that Kate and Jerry and Madeleine weren't there. Now, surprisingly enough, Miguel Matias, I think his name is, the owner of the bar, claims that, yes, and before we got the CCTV footage, he claims, yes, I saw Madeleine there. She was dancing with her daddy. And as we know, she wasn't there. And this is where it gets into the issue of, was Madeleine seen? Now, we know from him, he absolutely confirmed it was Madeleine, and yet we know it wasn't Madeleine. And Russell O'Brien and Jane Tanner had a daughter that was 3 months different, 3 months of age, different to Maddie, and had the same color hair. And this was obviously that he had seen them. But it just shows you how people believe they've seen Maddie when they haven't. But that will be on another Saturday. So anyway, Kate was down at the beach and she was running past them and supposedly waving. Meanwhile, Jerry had finished his tennis and he's back at the creche where Madeleine arrives for high tea. Sorry, back at the tapas area where Madeleine arrives for high tea. And so he claims to be at high tea when the children were there. And Kate arrived after her jog at approximately 5:30. Now, Catriona, the nanny, claims that Jerry wasn't there and that he was playing tennis, which is very odd, as who would have told her that? Because Kate tells us, I can't remember what Kate tells us, but what is odd, and something I want to mention, is that in November, they had a secret meeting. Now, this meeting was prior to the rogatory interviews, which were done in April. And Catriona went to visit them in Rothley, and that she was invited by the McCanns and may have learnt details and become confused. And I've seen so often that people blame or target Catriona for lying or anything. What I believe is very possible that may have happened is when she was invited there and they had the meetings, it is so possible that they kind of injected things into her brain like, oh yeah, Jerry was at tennis. And yeah, don't you remember, Catriona, when I was wearing the jogging outfit, and kind of put that kind of stuff into her brain. It's very possible because Jerry said he was there. Catriona says he wasn't there, but he was at tennis. Now, how would she know that? And Kate was supposedly, Catriona remembers her in a jogging outfit. Kate consistently claims that Madeleine was very tired and Madeleine asked her mother to carry her home. Now, there's one graphic I have, which I haven't given to Maureen. And what it is Catriona never in her statements that I have found says that she saw Madeleine at high tea that afternoon. She said that Kate was sat with the twins. She was never specific. I look for specifics. And is there somebody there? Anyway, I look for specifics, and never can I find Catriona actually saying that Kate was there, that Jerry was there. So this is another question. Kate actually signed Madeleine and the twins out at, I think, about 5:30. And supposedly because Madeleine was tired, they carried her back to the apartment. Jerry claims, and here we go again, that they went in through the patio doors and he let them in through the back. So he'd gone in the front door, opened the patio doors, while Kate struggles up the steps, and they were steep steps, and lets her in the back. And she was with the 3 children. Kate claims that they went through the front doors. So again, this happened in the morning. Both of them contradict each other, which is no big deal in real life. But the point is, you're giving a statement about the last day that Madeleine was alive, and you cannot remember between the two of you which door they went through, unless, of course, that didn't happen. That's the thing we have to wonder. it's and you have to wonder if they actually did go back to the apartment at that time. It's just something which really gets to you. Now, then what happens is Jerry, this was 5:30, they went back to the apartment. And as I recall, Jerry had a tennis lesson. So he left Kate with the children, apparently, and went to the tennis lesson. Now, Russell, we come in with Russell. He claims Kate and the children were there during the men's tennis. It was a men's tennis match. So, but Kate said she wasn't. She went back to the apartment, took a shower and a bath, which was kind of odd. But then she got a knock on the patio door, and it was David Payne, who'd stopped by to pass a message to her from Jerry. And that was about 6:30. Now, and he was asking if she needed help to take the children to the rec area. Kate claims that he was there for about 30 seconds. I think she had a towel on and claims it was for about 30 seconds. Now, David Payne goes into great detail about how lovely the children looked in their white. I won't go into detail, and I haven't got it, but he claims he obviously spent a lot more than 30 seconds in the apartment. I think, in fact, he acknowledges actually going into the apartment. Mrs. Fenn upstairs, the lady who lives above them. Now, according to one interview with Gonzalo Amaral, she said she saw David Payne on the balcony at 7. Now, a lot of what Gonzalo Amaral knows may not be in the files, but I absolutely believe anything from his interviews. And if he says that Mrs. Fenn saw David Payne on the balcony about 7, then I have to believe that that's a good possibility. Now, David Payne was back at his apartment at 7:10. The police actually asked Fiona, and she was having a lot of difficulty explaining where David was, until they finally had her agree that she had no idea where he was between 6 and 7. So, was he playing tennis? Was he at apartment 5A? We don't know. So then she went out jogging while the children were being bathed, and just before it was time to go to the tapas, which made them a little late. So then we get to arriving at the tapas. Now, I would have loved to have put something up in between to give you a little break from listening to me, but I can't think. Okay. Maureen, I do have a graphic. It won't take away from getting a break from me talking, but it's a graphic that, number one, it's about, it's about Matt meets the Paynes. Now, Kate and Jerry arrived, and Matthew Oldfield and Rachel arrived at the tapas between 8:30 and 9, not sure exactly what time. Then around 9 o'clock, Matthew decided to chivvy the Paynes as they hadn't arrived. So he was walking up to give them a nudge to get them back down. But what was strange, he claimed he saw them at the corner of the road by the first apartment. So you can see on the graphic, it's at the top. That's where Matt claims he saw them, the Paynes. Fiona Payne claims that she saw him near the gate of the back of the apartment, which you can see on the graphic, is further down. David Payne claims he saw them near the swimming pool, which was right inside the complex, quite some way. But what really is something very telling to me, because I absolutely believe that Diane Webster, Fiona's mother, really knew nothing about anything that might have been going on. And she claims categorically that she did not see him on the way to the tapas. At least until the rogatories in April, she said that she may have seen him as Fiona and David had reminded her that she saw him. Very odd, very odd. So basically, this, to me, it's very possible that this meeting did not take place, that this was set up and none of them had actually made it clear to each other where they were supposed to have met, and they all supposedly met at different places. I mean, that's for you to decide. You can check out all of this. It's all in the files, or so that you don't have to go through 40,000 files. If you need any information, just go to our Facebook group, Heidi Ho Controversy of Madeleine McCann, and either Cherry or Carrie will give you a link where you can find all this information, unless I'm there. But anyway, so now we get to the dinner. And this is the big dinner, the last one that they had. Now, during the dinner, the waiters claim that only the men ever got up from the table. And no one really knew why they left until after the disappearance. And then they presumed that they left the table to check the children. So in reality, nobody really knows why the men got up during that dinner. And so then, now that in my WordPress blog, that's where it ends. So what I can add now is totally from memory that Matt went to check on Madeleine. Why? When he came back, he said he checked on Madeleine. Why he didn't say the McCann children, we don't know, but he said he went to check on Madeleine. That was around 9. He was a little bit miffed because at 9:10, Jerry claimed that he went to check on Madeleine. And when he walked in the room, it was all quiet, and he thought how lovely Madeleine looked and how lucky he was. And on his way back, he supposedly met Jez Wilkins on the road. And they spoke for a few minutes. Now, again, what is really odd is that Jerry claims he was on the other side of the road. Not the road where the apartments are or the tapas bar is, but on the other side of the road. I thought that's so strange because Jez Wilkins claims that they were talking on the side of the road closest to the apartments and closest to the tapas. On reflection, knowing that there was somebody in the apartments right the way through that night, there was only 5 minutes of time when nobody was at the when everybody was at the table. So there was probably somebody staying with a child at some point with the children. And so there was only a very small window of opportunity because about 9:20, I think, Jane supposedly walked up, and that's when she saw the supposed kidnapper walking across the road with what she thought later might have been Madeleine. And Jez Wilkins doesn't remember seeing her. And Jerry claims he was on the other side of the road with Jez Wilkins. And during the following 3 minutes approximately, when Jane saw the kidnapper, meaning Maddie had been taken from the apartment, supposedly, or the 3 minutes before, while Jerry was talking to Jez, during that 3 minutes, after Jerry came out of the apartment and before Jane arrived to see this kidnapper going, there was about 3 minutes. Now, during that 3 minutes, I think Jerry chose to say it was the other side of the road, because had he been next to the apartment, it would have been obvious that they would have heard somebody or seen somebody in and out of the apartment. But anyway, that's just another issue. Jane said that she saw the kidnapper going across the road, left to right. An interesting thing that Gonzalo Amaral tells us is that, in fact, they didn't use the front doors. They used the patio doors. And that tells me that somebody was already in the apartment to open the patio doors for them, for whoever was going to visit, all of the, except David Payne, who was up on the next floor. And he said that that's when they realized that Jane's vision of seeing this abductor, I've forgotten his words, but basically held no water, because they knew, we don't know it from the files, but Gonzalo Amaral knows that they did not walk around to the front doors to check on the children. They did it from the patio doors at the back. And that is, to me, something that's huge. Not in the files, but Gonzalo Amaral would know that. And we have the video of that, of him talking about that. So this is just all doesn't fit. And from then on, as we know, Jerry goes back to the tapas and joins them back there. 5 minutes later, Matt and Russell both get up from the table. Matt supposedly goes with Russell to his apartment, but Russell decides to stay because the children are not well, or one of the children is not well. Matt goes apparently into the McCann's apartment through the patio doors and claims that he didn't actually see Madeleine because she was behind the door, like not behind the door, but to the left of the door behind the wall. And he came back to the tapas. Russell stayed, and supposedly a short time after, Jane left the tapas and went over to relieve Russell, and he, about 5 to 10, returned back to the tapas just before Kate got up at 10 o'clock approximately, went over to the apartment and discovered that Madeleine was missing. And as we know, instead of yelling, phoning, screaming, she's missing, she didn't. She leaves the two young twins that were about 20 months old in the apartment on their own and goes back to the tapas bar to supposedly get help, where they all went back to the apartment. And now it gets to the point that this really, really annoys me, because this is just previous to where the police are called. Now, this was around 10ish, just after. The police did not receive that call till 10:40. And it's all in the files. And yet they claim that the police took a long time. There was 2 officers in Oxodier or somewhere. I don't know how you say it, and they were there within 15 minutes. So they arrived around just before 11. And this is where they started to claim how the police were so bad. And it follows through to this day, because I think they needed to make sure that the police had no credibility whatsoever, so that when the police did show everybody the facts, the Portuguese police, that nobody would believe them. They've told everybody how terrible they were, and you can, and it really is sad that the Portuguese police have been made out to be. I'm sorry. I've made a few videos about the police and how quickly they reacted, and how by just after 1 o'clock in the morning, there were around 13 police officers there. This is just over an hour since they were called, and there were already 13 police officers there. And through to the night, there were more and more. The police officers were called in from their sleep to come and help that night. There was a lot of police officers there, and I can't offhand remember how many, but I do have them all listed, the times they arrived, the times they left, and they were right there through till, I know that the one officer was right there through till about 7 in the morning, and he left for an hour and he came back again. It was a tremendous effort by the Portuguese police, and that is what makes me really upset, that people believe that the police did nothing to help them. It's so very sad, and I have the proof. I have the tables of, as I say, all of the police that attended, at what time they attended, at what time they left, and whether they weren't on duty, they were called from their beds to come and help. And then they brought the police dogs in that morning. And Jerry and Kate, meanwhile, there was a lot of people around the area that were searching until about 4 in the morning. Jerry and Kate, meanwhile, went back to Fiona and Dave's apartment and slept, supposedly. And between 6 and 7, they came out and decided to, and have been claimed to have been stumbling over bushes and trying to search for Madeleine. And if you look at Kate's phone records, you'll see she was on the phone most of the time. Just doesn't fit. So I think at that point there was a lot more that happened during that night, but we can maybe go through that later, because I think you've probably had about enough of it right now. Now, just the one thing, Maureen, if you could put up let me see, the number 5 graphic, that would be great. And this is the picture of Madeleine that was posted on all the notice boards everywhere to try and get hold of Madeleine. Now, there is an issue about where they got the picture from, who printed it. That's another story, and it's not one I'm overly familiar with. But for now, if you look at that picture was taken quite some time ago. And you can look at the picture of one of the Payne's daughters. You can see there's a resemblance. And my belief is very possibly that rather than show the picture they took supposedly that day from the last picture, they didn't want, and this is the possibility of a theory. I mean, you can believe what you want individually, but my thoughts went to, did they put a post out for a child that looked younger? Because in reality, if Madeleine from that last picture hadn't been seen all week, that would not, we wouldn't want anybody saying, no, we didn't see her. But if they put a picture of one of the younger children from one of the friends, or that was younger, that looked similar to one of the friends' daughters, people would say, oh yeah, we saw Madeleine. Yeah. So I don't know. That's just something that I've come up with, and it's up for you to decide on that. So I think for now, thankfully for you, I'm going to stop on that. And I'd like now for any of you to ask some questions and see if there's anything that you want to know. So hopefully Shirley will help us on that. I don't think there's, I don't think there's another graphic we need for now, Maureen. That's okay.
Okay.
So is there any questions anywhere that people have been asking or would like to ask and about anything that night?
Actually, the chat's been pretty quiet. I think everybody's mostly just been listening. So we'll wait for some questions to come up. One question, and it's more of a personal thing for you, is where do you believe Maddie was hidden at the time she was reported missing?
Well, this is the time she was reported missing is a little different from the time I believe she was moved. I don't know what day this would have happened. Something seemed to me to happen on the Monday because the discrepancies, the contradictions all started around the Tuesday morning. And that told me something's happened before Tuesday. Now, in the apartment, the forensics found blood that was Madeleine's, had all of Madeleine's components. I can't remember the exact words, were behind the sofa. Now, even if it was 100%, which it might have been, I don't think those particular ones were actually recorded. I might be wrong there. Even if they were 100%, that would not be any proof of anything happening because Madeleine was known to be in the apartment. So those kind of those forensics were not viable to be able to use as proof. Now the forensics were found. The blood was found behind the sofa, and then the cadaver odor. The cadaver odor was then found in the bedroom, and then cadaver odor was found on the veranda outside the bedroom, along with some hairs, and those hairs were sent to Portugal. And then the cadaver odor was found on the garden below. And so it seems a possibility that if something happened earlier and Madeleine was moved, it would have been from behind the sofa, through to the bedroom, out onto the veranda, down to the garden, and then presumably by car or whatever to where Gonçalo Amaral believed that she was, hate to say it, put maybe into a freezer and until it was moved a little while later. So that could have been any time between Tuesday and Thursday, if that happened.
Okay, what do you see asked, how did Kate get those bruises?
Oh, when it comes to bruises, I mean, we've seen them. Madeleine actually had bruises, which if you watch the video I've done about the tennis, Gonçalo Amaral refers to them, that Madeleine had bruises on her arm and also on her leg. And as he says, Kate just says, oh, it was a sunburn. Now, the fact that he brought that up into an interview makes you wonder what it was. But really, when it comes to the little specifics like that, I'm not always the best person to ask. I'm there with the timelines, but I don't know if anybody can actually answer it. You know, when did they appear? Yes, you can see them on photos, and we all can think, well, this might have happened, or this is how it might have happened. But did it? I don't know. So that's as far as I. Oh, and before I forget, there was somebody that asked last week about 15 years. I wasn't able to answer that. Something happens to the case after 15 years. And I just want to let them know that I have found out that, yes, there is something to do with the case that happens after 15 years from the date of the actual abduction or whatever, disappearance. But I haven't yet been able to get all the details. Apparently, they would maybe be exonerated after the 15 years, but they would be accountable for the perversion of justice regarding the media and things like that. So I can't really fully answer the question. I wanted to let you know that I did look into it, and I will get back to you on that. So,
Hi, Paula.
So, hey, Maureen. So, so the one thing that has always bothered me is that when Kate raised the alarm, so she ran down to the tapas bar, raised the alarm. So if her interviews are to be believed, she said that the door slammed and the curtains went whoosh and so on and so forth. So those curtains that she was referring to backed onto the car park. So if that was my child, I would have run out into the car park at that moment in time, and I wouldn't, and then I would have gone to the tapas slot, you know. So why didn't she go into the car park? That car park was, in my opinion, the absolute pinnacle of anything. But she didn't. I would have, if the curtains went whoosh, and that window and that curtain fell onto the car park, I would have gone into the car park, and if it was my child, I would have run out there and had a look what was going on. Why didn't she do that? Why did she do what she did? That's my question.
yeah, and it's a question I think everybody would ask that, because the point is, why did they need to even use the window when the patio doors were open? You know, it's so silly, and it just doesn't fit into place. And I think it's all part and parcel of the fact that it wasn't real. In my opinion, it didn't seem to be real. After reading the files, I'm absolutely cannot see anything. We have absolutely no proof of an abduction. Absolutely none. No proof whatsoever. The only proof that they had was Jane, and that wasn't even proof.
No, that was right.
Yeah, Jane saying that she saw the abductor. Now, I think the police were forced a little while later to make a photo fit. And what was it? It was a white face with wispy hair. In fact, it made its way onto some site that was doing a competition for the most ludicrous photo fits. I mean, it was literally looked like an egg with hair.
I mean, if that guy came forward, so that was debunked very early on. The only photo fits they have, and I hate to say it, but the photo fit looked like GM.
This is the point, is if it was a real abduction, then I think you could scrutinize all that stuff to search for the abductor. But the point when you believe that something happened earlier and there was an abduction, I think you can just look at that stuff and say, yeah, this is what they were trying. You know, this is what they tried to make us believe. And the point, even those, and this is where a weird contradiction comes into place, because Operation Grange apparently were able to show that there was a real chap that was taking his daughter back from another crash. But then Gonzalo is telling us that no, she wouldn't have been walking up that way because they always use the patio doors. So an Operation Grange, And I think this is something, anybody who's got an interest in how Operation Grange is working on this case. Their remit was not to place Kate and Jerry as being the suspects, something of that nature.
The thing that worries me about Operation Grange is that the government and the taxpayer are still paying this, clearly, because that's happened recently. If they were to go under, that leaves an open book for other investigators to look at the McCanns. And that's why I think Operation Grange is still going, so that people don't look at, gosh, am I being cynical?
No. In fact, I'd not really thought of that. And that's I'm sure other people have. I mean, I haven't focused on Operation Grange. But yeah, that's a good point, that I don't believe anything can be done until the Portuguese police, who absolutely have claimed that Madeleine died in the apartment, the parents hid her body, and they simulated an abduction. So what I'm saying is not because I have come up with that with anything that I have studied, but everything I've studied comes to that, which is the reason why the police do believe that. But if Operation Grange, as you say, if they did step down for any reason, could somebody else come in and really show the proof? And actually, this is something I saw today, if you don't mind me interrupting you, is I watched, now I mentioned about the Mark Salnokonuko interviews on the podcast from Australia. And I saw, and this reminded me, I saw an interview of him with Sonia Poulton a short while ago. And something I didn't know was really interesting is that I knew that they came across, they interviewed Mark Perlin, who was a great forensic chappie. And he offered, with all the new techniques that are available now, to be able to use the forensics that they had back in 2007 and be able to absolutely come up with whether any of those samples were Maddie or weren't Maddie. I mean, they're not looking to prove it was Maddie. They're looking for the truth. And they offered to do it for free.
Yeah, but they won't accept it, will they? They won't.
Yeah, and what's really kind of shocked me was in this interview with Sonia, Mark is saying that they went to Theresa May. They went to the highest they could go to.
They did.
Offer the forensics to come in and redo them, and nobody wanted anything to do with it. Nobody. Here, even though they're paying 13 million for Operation Grange to supposedly search for Maddie, these forensics would either say yes, it was Maddie, or no, it wasn't Maddie, because the techniques are so great now, and they won't do it. Now there is a reason.
They won't do it because they need Operation Grange to continue, and this is why the taxpayer is paying 300,000 every year, or every 6 months, or every 2 years, or whatever it is.
13 million in total, right?
While Operation Grange is running, nobody else can look at the parents. Take them out of the equation, and then outside influences could look at the case and start from ground zero. And ground zero, as we all know, you look at the last person that saw the child, and that comes back to the parents. They're not going to do that. The British government are not going to do that, because if they do that, that opens up a real flipping web we weave.
Yeah, I would really like one of our weeks to address the situation about basically a cover-up. And I mean, Gonzalo Amaral has claimed that right from the start, he was stopped. That morning, the following morning after the abduction, he was basically, what's the word? There's a word he uses, but he was not forced, but it was suggested that the only way he could go was to follow the abduction theory. And
I think when you look at Colin Sutton in the UK, he was given this case, but he was told by somebody on the outside that if you take this case on, you cannot look at the parents, so you can't start at ground zero. And so he said, well, there's no point doing it, and so he didn't. And this is the point. The UK government have whitewashed the whole of the media to say that you can't look at the parents.
Yeah, and that follows through. I just want to say on that Colin Sutton issue is I'm not sure that he was actually asked. I think a friend, somebody had come to him and said he may have been asked, but if he is, to be aware. But that's just a slight thing there. The point is, I have videos showing how the press was handled. Clarence Mitchell was ex-BBC. He was the media monitoring unit for the government, and he left to speak for the McCanns. I mean, you have to question that. And absolutely. Then, yeah. Oh, okay. And what happened was that they manipulated the press and would only give interviews to the press that went along with their narrative. And that didn't include the Portuguese. So the Portuguese were never given the opportunity to be around when there was going to be some press thing, you know, the parents walking along the beach. Only the British were allowed to know that was going to happen. The Portuguese.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Excuse me. The fact is, so the PJ, in my opinion, did an absolute sterling job. And then, and I hate to say it, that we got involved, us from the UK, and we took over the media, we took over the governmental stuff. We whitewashed the PJ because they're not used to something like this in their region. It absolutely baffles me, and still to this day, because I was a real avid supporter of all the Madeleine McCann groups, and I'm still in a lot of them, but I haven't gone to them for a long time because, you know, it's probably like the Watts case. I kind of gave up, and I feel guilty for that, but I did. You know, but this situation is still going on. And I think it worries me that our government are having influence, yes, that's what I mean, influence over this case. And they did from the get-go. And I think they whitewashed the Portuguese, and it absolutely infuriates me. Absolutely, because Gonzalo Amaral, I think he had it spot on from the beginning. That's my opinion.
Oh, no question. No question. He was right there. Now, a lot of people maybe don't realize he was actually the, I don't know his actual title. I know he was chief coordinator for this case, but he was actually in charge of southern Portugal. He wasn't dealing with just this case. He was a fantastic chap that had, I think just previously, he'd solved a lot of the drug crimes around Portugal. He was well known, and look at what happened to him. Somebody took him, from what I understand anyway, he had complained. I'm not sure if it was because of the Gasper statements that were not sent, but he had mentioned to somebody maybe not in confidence, but certainly not in public, that he was upset with the way the British police were handling it. And before long, he was just removed. He wasn't fired. He wasn't sacked. He was taken back to Faro, but he was removed. And that in itself...
I think those Gasper statements were played down. But I think they're a huge part to play in this.
Well, that's very possible because being admin for HDH, a Heidi Ho controversy, we have never promoted those because they are controversial. It is a sensitive issue. But the point is, it's facts from the files. Now, when I say facts, I mean, yes, the two doctors that were on holiday with them in Mallorca, I think it was a year or so earlier, made these statements. They were held in Leicester. They were made in May, and they were held in Leicester until, I think, November, when finally they were discovered in a pile of other documents. They were faxed over in a pile of other documents with nothing. And what is believed is that a policeman that was with Leicester popped them in. Good for him, because at that point they became known. But this was in November, after Gonzalo was there. And why? Why were they not sent? Why were they held back?
Well, I can tell you that I am less than 15 minutes away from David Payne's hospital. That is very local to me, and I've been treated there. That worries me, and I just when I look at a lot of people's views on the situation, they don't know. They don't know who they're dealing with. And at Leicester Hospital, so I have literally come eye to eye with Jerry McCann because I go there for something. And even in the last 6 months, I've been eye to eye to him. And gosh, he's not the person I thought he was. He's a lot smaller. He's a lot timid. He's a lot meek, mild. People don't know what they're dealing with. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that must be... Oh, I don't know how I could handle that. I really don't. Can you pop up? Oh, hi, I'm Heidi Ho. Yeah, right. That would go down well.
Well, I crossed his path, and it was literally walking through a foyer, and I looked at him. It was like a split second, but it was eye to eye, and he was walking with perhaps another consultant. And I just, and this was like 2 months ago, and I remember feeling cold, and when you get this urge to go and speak to somebody, you get that urge, and then you sort of cower away.
Yeah, well, probably wouldn't have been a good idea to go up and speak to him.
I definitely wouldn't.
And the thing is, I mean, I think it's important to remember that he is a valued person in that hospital. He's a valued doctor. I mean, I don't think we've ever tried to devalue his abilities in that, but certainly there is so much more that that has been done, that has been hidden, and this case is far, far, far greater than anybody who hasn't looked into it would understand. If anybody who's just reading the media, it's a cut and dry abduction. I mean, they've had the occasions where at one point they had the hearing in Portugal, and they had the Tavares de Almeida, he was up on the stand, and also, oh golly, I can't remember his name, the chap that was working with the McCanns, the, not intermediary, but whatever the word is. and they had him up on the stand. Now, what was really intriguing about that is that during the course of that trial hearing, Jerry left early, and you can see I have the videos of him coming out and speaking to the press saying, well, I've had to leave because I've got business appointments to look after, but Kate is going to stay on. And at that point, there was about 50 newspapers explaining about the dogs, the cadaver dogs, everything that was going against the McCanns, because this is what was in the court and what was taken from the court proceedings. Now, the strange thing is, and I happened upon this by accident, and I want to mention again, the Maddie case files, the admin there are the ones that translated voluntarily all the files, or the majority that we need anyway. And without them, we couldn't have been, this case wouldn't have been able to be studied the way it is. And I thank them so much. There was Astro, Kazlux, Inez, and I think at the beginning, Joanna Moray, and they translated the files for us to see. But there was also Jilly CL. And what she did, and you can go there and see every single news article for every day in chronological order for, I don't know, 10 years. Maybe they're still doing it. I haven't checked. But you can go back to the exact date and see every article in there about the McCanns. And one day I'd stop back to see this day. I think it was about January the 10th, 2010 maybe. And I looked at these 50 articles, and then I went 2 days down and there was only 2 articles. And I thought, this is odd. And what had happened, and what I believe probably happened, is that Jerry had left not to go to a business meeting or whatever that he had to leave for. But I believe that it's very possible he left there and went straight back to stop all the papers from reporting on it, because there was about 50 articles. And again, I have a graphic for this, but I don't have it handy, of course. There was about 50 articles about the McCanns and the dogs and the cadaver odor and all this. And I think it was about 2 or 3 days later, there was just one article on the McCanns about something that they were going to. Everything had stopped. All the press was put on hold with the McCanns. And I'm pretty sure that Jerry had something to do with it. And that brings to mind too, that back in the September of 2007, when they left to come home after the dogs had been, and they were declared arguidos, suspects, obviously everybody started to really think, are they involved? I mean, they were made suspects, which has a slightly different meaning in Portugal, but basically they're of interest, people of interest who've got information that they don't, once they're arguidos, it protects them from having to speak. And
they still are, aren't they? They technically still are arguido.
Well, in a sense, yes. And what happened after they were made arguidos, everybody was turning against them. This was the beginning of September the 13th, 9th, whatever. And everybody was turning against them. Now, they claimed that they were going to put out a special poster appeal, and they were using money to start. They went back to England, and they were going to use this money to set out a poster appeal for everybody. What we discovered was that what they actually did was pay £30,000 to Hanover, who were a PR company, to change the view of the public from hostility to sympathy. and they won an award for it. And that's how we found out, not because the McCanns told us, but because Hanover won an award. And I think it was Spudgun, Mike, whatever, who found it. And so then we realized that this £30,000 had been spent to change public opinion. And what that involved was to prevent the media from talking about them and to change. I think at that point, that's when they really kind of did change how they spoke about the case. It's so sad. And I mean, the media have really taken the UK public and given them the McCann narrative and never given an opportunity for the media to even know about the files. And somebody mentioned about the files and about how valid they are. Well, I have to say that I do know that not only are the people that translated the files, the majority of them have all been checked. They're continually checked. Anybody who has a question about them, because they are up against the original Portuguese. So it's easy for somebody who's Portuguese to check and question them. And they haven't been questioned in all these years. There's a few changes made. But a lot of those people were actually translators that did it. I mean, it's so sad for people to put down the effort and the great effort that they did. So if anybody
I've read the files, and I would say I've read the files. You can't get better than that. I have to say that it was this that stopped me believing in the mainstream media in the UK. It absolutely changed me completely. From that day on, I don't listen to the news. I don't listen to normal TV. I get my info from research, because after this case, and all the BS that was put out there, and after reading the files, people even to this day don't understand the in-depth info that is out there, and it oh my God,
it's huge.
Yeah,
the case itself is huge.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, if anybody disputes any of the statements, then feel welcome to compare them to the original Portuguese and let us know, because to this day, those statements will be adjusted accordingly. There is nothing that has been put in those statements that, if open to scrutiny, that they won't check and recheck again. So anybody who's questioning that the files have been badly translated, then please go check out the Portuguese and let us know. It's really sad that anybody would question them. They don't. There is nothing been in question. Oh, a few little things that I've seen that have been changed because they were questioned, and nothing of any great importance. But it's right there. So as far as the files, and the McCanns actually paid £100,000 to get the files translated. Now, in their search for Maddie, you'd think that they would release their files to...
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
And they're not. And why not? Because it points to them.
Exactly.
But they spent £100,000 on them to have them translated.
Yeah, but did they spend £100,000, or did we, the taxpayer, and the donations that spent the £100,000? They didn't spend that. No.
Well, the donations, I did an in-depth thing about, or I took every, because we weren't being told everything. I think at one point it had got to just 1 million or so. And what I did, I took every single newspaper article that I could about where people had donated, you know, different things, different organizations, and made a note of it, added it all up. I did a very detailed scrutiny of the actual input that the McCanns would have had to the fund, the search fund. And what was really took me by surprise, actually, because after that first year, after I'd done my initial addition of everything that they should have received, when their accounts came out that first year, I pretty much had everything even to the penny. I remember the last number was 6. It was almost to the penny. I had it correct, except for, I think, maybe 100,000, but when we're talking 1 million and something. But the point is, mine did not include the donations that they had, which we didn't know how much. I only did the donations when we had a figure to work with. And what they didn't include was, I think there was a Stephen again with Y. Anyway, he donated lots of other donations that they had, and that was not included in their first years. And I believe that was sent to the taxman at the time, because it was a very detailed.
Lizzie, you did an absolutely fantastic job. Nobody can dispute that, not even me. And you did a great job, definitely.
Oh, thank you. I have to say that when I did originally start it, I didn't do it for anybody else. I did it for myself. I spent actually 4 years, and if anybody has seen the statements from the Tapas 9, you'd understand why it took 4 years. I took every statement and I took out every timeline, everything that I could attach to a timeline. And then I put them all into tables of every quarter for the whole week for every single person. And then I started to compare them. And I did the timelines for all the 9 of them, going through and checking across. And still to this day, I still haven't completed it, because a lot of it was copy and paste, 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, and then I'd add everybody's 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, and didn't really check to see all the discrepancies. So there's a lot that's still there. But yeah, I did that. Once they started, I put it into a forum, which wasn't public. I mean, it was just for me. Nobody really knew of me at that time. I was maybe in the forums, maybe used to post. So I did everything for me, because to me, when I first heard about the case, I was in an expats forum, and they asked me about it. And I said, well, yeah, but I'm not going to form an opinion until I have some facts. Until you've got knowledge, you really can't give a credible opinion. And it kind of ended me where I am 13 years later. But yeah, I put it for myself. I do it for myself. I enjoy doing it for myself. And if somebody else wants to look at it, it's out there for anybody to see. Thousands and thousands of posts and detailed information about the case and about the files. And I have enjoyed doing it. And actually, this is an opportunity for me to let people know what I actually have found, because I mean, there's a whole lot more that I can talk about, which I hopefully will. But I'm looking forward to getting more guests. I think these first 2 episodes is basically just to give people a basic idea, because I think there's a lot of people that are not familiar with the case. So I just wanted to go over the basic holidays. And then, I mean, if anybody's got any input on any topic that they want to see about and what we've discovered from it. And I'm planning maybe one on the neglect and no abduction, because with no neglect, if they hadn't have said they neglected the children, that wouldn't have given the opportunity for somebody to have abducted Madeleine.
Absolutely.
You know, this is the whole thing. And I think we need a week on that. Certainly, I would love to be able to cover everything that people want to know. So, I mean, I would love for people to make suggestions. I certainly have a lot. And if you look at the WordPress blog, which I think Carrie might, just by chance, have the link to, you can see that I've got a whole lot of pages there dedicated to different topics. And a lot of my videos have all been based on all the information I found. I only go from the files, from interviews, and from books, whether it be Gonzalo's book, whether it be Kate's book, Jerry's blogs. I have a whole calendar of from September through till I'm not sure. Sorry, May to September, where I've compiled everything they've worn a specific day, all the information I could get for that day, the news articles, Jerry's blogs, Kate's diary, so you could compare on each day what we were being told and what they were saying. And it's just something I do, I guess. I don't know. But hopefully it would.
Lizzie, I have watched you from day one, even though I'm one of these stand back watchers, silent watchers. I've watched you from day one, and I continue to watch you. And I recommend other people to follow you, to have a look at your content, because you are absolutely spot on with everything you do, and you do an absolutely amazing job. You put a lot of work in. I know that, even though I sit back. I haven't commented on the Madeleine McCann case for a long time, probably a couple of years. That doesn't mean to say that I'm not in the group still. And I do watch and I do follow. So I recommend everybody to come and have a look at your channel on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Everybody should go and take a look, because this lady puts her work in and she is spot on.
Well, I try, and it's important to me to not use speculation or anything like that to give information to others. If I don't stand behind it, then I am not going to post it. I'm not saying maybe I'm not right all the time. But then I use the stuff from the files, etc. So it's not about being right, but we all have different theories based on the information we're given. And that in itself is why I hope that whatever I've put out there is okay for everybody. If somebody shows me details which don't match, then I will check it out and correct it. Because what's the use? I want the truth. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it just because I want to be right. I want to know that what I'm saying, everything that I'm doing, is the right, correct. That's the whole point. So, was there any other questions? Actually, I've got to leave for a second, but I'll be back in a minute if you would just excuse me.
There are a couple other questions that I'll ask when Lizzie gets back, but maybe for Paula and Maureen. I don't know if Lizzie planned on talking about this, but in the podcast, I'm getting to the part where they're talking about the Smith sighting. Do you guys have any, do you want to talk about that, a little bit of information about that, or have your opinion about that?
Can you manage to?
Yeah, I was just refreshing my memory because it's been a while since I've read about that one.
So it was the Smith family that I think they were coming home from there, and yeah, that whole thing. And then once they got home and he saw Jerry McCann coming off the plane carrying one of the twins, that he didn't realize. Okay, does that refresh your memory?
Yes, it does. He was seen walking down the street carrying a child, and I believe, someone correct me if I'm wrong, she was held laying over the top of his shoulder. I think I'm right, because that seems to me to have been an odd way to carry her. And I can remember Mr. Smith said he looked at Jerry, but he looked away. He didn't want to make kind of eye contact or look at him. He kind of sort of turned his face away.
I think the Smith sighting was absolutely spot on, and I think it's been pushed under the rug. But I think that Smith sighting was probably, a key point.
But what I found, and I can't remember the details, but I will look them up, was his daughter gave a couple of statements which didn't tally up. I can't remember her name. Oh, God.
Well, there was according to the podcast, and it's just in the episode that I've been listening to. There's some controversy about it because he didn't necessarily report it right away. It was weeks after the fact, and even then, after he saw Jerry McCann coming off the plane carrying one of the twins, and that's what reminded him, because it looked the same, with the head on the shoulder and the arms kind of drooping down, and so they did. It still took him a few weeks to report it, and something about when they did a sketch based on his memory, there was no face to the sketch because he said that he didn't see the face. And I'm just going off of the podcast from what I know about it. So that's as far as it's kind of.
I think if you can imagine, the child was held up onto his shoulder, and you could more or less say her face was near his face. So he was partly covered up by the child, but he turned his face away because he didn't really want to be seen.
Right. And so that's the other question that, and I'm trying not to ask too many questions because I'm hoping that it all comes out later in the podcast, but that this sighting supposedly took place about the same time that woman said that she saw Jane, I think, saw the sighting.
Oh, Jane Tanner, yeah. Now, I've always thought about that one.
And so there were the two men that she said she saw. But those two men,
they were debunked, though, Cheryl.
Right.
The Jane Tanner sighting was absolutely debunked. The guy came forward and he took a child from a crash. So the Jane Tanner sighting can't come into any equation.
Well, right. What I was saying was, in the podcast, he makes a point of pointing out that the two men that she spoke about seeing there, how they didn't see her, but they also didn't see the Smith family either. They didn't report seeing the Smith family either.
No, but why would they? Because the Smith family sighting was in a different location. So
that's what I said. I don't know. That's just what he pointed out in the podcast, and I was kind of hoping he gets more in detail to it. So that's why I'm kind of asking you guys about what you know about that part.
Yeah, I think that the sighting from the Tanner etc., down to the Smith sighting. The Smith sighting, to me, was kind of brushed under the carpet, but I actually think that Smith sighting is more credible than people realise, and that's why I think it's been sort of, brushed aside and all that stuff. But I think we need to look more into that Smith sighting. That's my opinion.
The Smith sighting for me was something which, although I absolutely believe that they saw somebody, whether it was Jerry, I don't know, maybe it was, but it wasn't for me directly related to anything other than maybe it was a distraction. And for that reason, I have not really, you'll notice in my videos, I have not addressed the Smith sighting, because although, yes, it was something which could have meant something, apparently, supposedly taking Madeleine down to the beach to bury her or anything like that.
I think he did. I think maybe he did, because if you consider, when you look at the reconstruction that was done, it wasn't done officially, and Jerry was saying where he met Jez on the other side of the road, but Jane Tanner says that they met on the other side of the road, and that Jerry was gone for a long time due to the football or whatever it might have been. And if you look at that timeline, then Jerry could have, I'm not saying he did, but he could have carried a body down to the beach when the Smith sighting was reported. So it's so
yeah, and it would mean that something would have happened to Maddie that night, which obviously I don't believe there was even time for, never mind if it actually happened. But also I looked at the fact that we know from the dog's findings that there was blood involved, Madeleine's blood. And if something had happened to Maddie that night and it was her being carried, you'd think he'd put a blanket. It just doesn't seem credible to me. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't him, and I'm not saying he wasn't carrying a child, but I don't believe, if that happened, that it was Maddie, because of the discrepancies starting Tuesday. Now, as I've mentioned, although they started Tuesday, I believe something happened before Tuesday, but she still could have been alive until Thursday. So, I don't know. We don't know. There is nothing that I can find that tells us anything that is a day that she actually may have died. It's what the PJ believed that she died, but we don't know which day. There's nothing. And unless I saw something in the files, which I haven't found, that tells me, because that's the thing with what I look for. I'm not looking to try and make things fit. I wait to see what the files tell me. And certainly they've never told me which day she might have found. I managed to go back to be told as such which day she was last seen. And that's what the files tell me. But nothing to tell me what day that she actually died, if we're to believe that she died before Thursday. So, that's why the Smith sighting has never been of importance to me. But that doesn't mean that this was all part of the setup and the distraction of the abduction night. It was a planned abduction as far as the police go. They don't say it's planned, but it was an abduction as far as the Portuguese police claim. No, sorry. As far as Operation Grange claims, but the actual abduction was simulated. And was this trip to the beach with a child part of it? I don't know.
Lizzie, I kind of agree with you. I think the abduction was taking place a couple of days before. That's my opinion. It's my personal opinion, and a lot of people won't agree with me on this. I do think something happened a few days before, but I do also think that the Smith sighting had something to do with it. I do.
Well, yeah, and you know the thing is, and that's why I say it could very possibly have been Jerry. This is from my opinion. It could very possibly have been Jerry. Could very possibly have been in place to distract from the actual abduction. But what I do want to tell you is that Isabel McFadden, who is Portuguese, but she lives in California and is absolutely superb on the case. She has been in touch with the Portuguese police, partly because she can speak Portuguese, but no, she is wonderful, and I believe she has actually spoken to Mr. Smith. So she has agreed to come on here, probably not next week, but the week after, and she has information which is just great. And this is what I'm looking forward to. I don't want you all to have to put up with me every week. I really want to have some other guests that are familiar.
You play yourself down. You definitely play yourself down. We absolutely want to know your opinion.
Well, yeah, but listening to me for an hour and a half or whatever is pretty
listen for another hour. That's lovely.
Well, I do appreciate that, but it's okay. I'm under no illusion. So, but I really do think it would be great to have some guests, and we are trying to get them. But you know, it takes time to find somebody who's actually spoken. I mean, Isabel is just perfect, and I was so happy tonight when she told me that she's going away for a week, but she'll be back. And I'm not sure if it's going to be by next week, but certainly the week after, and she'd love to do it. I'm really looking forward to that. You'll love Isabel. She's done lots of interviews around, and she's great. I've always got on so well with Isabel. And she's been in touch with people that none of us have ever been in touch with. And there's one thing, sometimes people question, she has never told me anything that she hasn't been able to back up. And I will always stand up for Isabel and her credibility. So I know there's going to be some people that will question that, but if you trust me, then you trust Isabel. She is great. So I'm looking forward to that. And if there is anybody else that would like to be on here on panel, you don't have to have special knowledge, but you know, if you have knowledge of the case that you'd love to share, I mean, that would be absolutely great. Is there anybody? Are you checking, Shirley?
I am. I have a few questions. They're from a little bit further back, and a few comments. Daniel Wiltshire, sorry if I said that wrong, made a comment that said her wording, they have taken her, creating a narrative.
Yeah, and that's the name of Mark Salnokonoko's new podcast coming out soon. They've taken her, and I think he mentioned there's a Twitter account with that name, so it's worth checking that out. I wasn't able to check that, but honestly, I think Carrie has put up the interview he had with Sonia Poulton, and he's explaining about the other podcast he had, and apparently they've entered into some award. They had to take 15 minutes out of their podcast, out of 10-hour-long podcasts, and put it together for an award. So let's hope that they do well on that, because honestly, I cannot believe I was interacting with Mark for a good part of 2 years. Maybe there was a time in between, but he honestly absolutely wanted to get the truth that he could find, and he had superb guests on, and he was quite proud to have had Gonzalo Amaral on the last episode. That was supposed to be 9 episodes, and they extended it to 10, and there was a lot of what Gonzalo told him over the phone with a translator that he couldn't put in the podcast. And I don't like to ask him, but maybe I will try. But no, he's a superb investigative journalist, and I don't think there's too many around. And that's why I found it sad when articles come out that he's not written, or the 60 Minutes about what's his name, the German chap, Bruckner. It's just not. I don't want to say anything, but Mark is absolutely great. So please, if you get the opportunity, do listen to his podcast. I think it'll it'll open your eyes. And as Shirley said, she's on number 4, but he's got a great voice to listen to too. So it's worthwhile.
Well, my opinion is that the kids weren't left every night, because from what I've looked at, there was an adult away from the table every single evening.
Yes.
So I think the kids were looked after in
Absolutely.
the apartment. That's my opinion, and people may not agree with that.
I agree.
Yeah, that's my opinion. So I don't think they were left alone, and I think the abduction theory was put out there. I think it's a hoax. Oh God, I'm not going to say anymore because people are going to jump on me.
No.
Well, no, not when you know that the Portuguese police files tell us, and I forgot to give the graphic to Maureen. The Portuguese police files tell us that Madeleine died in the apartment. The parents hid her body and they simulated an abduction. Yeah. So if anybody is listening to me and thinking, oh, she's going on about this and that, but she, it was an abduction, she's just a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. No.
If I am, I can point to every single thing I say. I can give a link, as I've told you, in our Heidi Ho Controversy Facebook group. Kerry and Cherry are absolutely spot on, and we're not there to tell you what to think. We accept anybody who they have instructions to accept anybody with any opinion, as long as they are willing for us to give them a link to show them what is in the files or what is known. And Kerry and Cherry are superb at doing that. Even last week, I didn't even know this. I'm going on. Cherry is busy in the group bumping all the posts according to the topics I was talking about. I mean, she is so great. They both are. I'm really lucky. They've been with me for about 7 years. And they can read my mind, but what can I say? And there's Kerry. Probably I haven't looked, but Kerry's probably in chat right now, just adding the links as soon as I say something.
Kerry has been a mad woman, dropping links all over, which is awesome.
She is great. And so in our group, and I'm sure in Maureen's group and all the others, if you need any information, just ask. If you question anything I say, then please question it. And we'll let you know whether I made a mistake or whether there is a link that you can see where I got it from. Because a lot of what I've said tonight, or any night, as I mentioned, I'm pretty much just winging it. And it's not something I'm familiar with doing. But I've got so much information in my head that I have got that I don't think anybody else has, because I don't think anybody else has taken the files, put them into about 400 different timetables and compared them and done all this and come up with the discrepancies I've come up with. And actually, Maureen, I think we do have a graphic for that.
Yes, which one would that be?
Graphic number 6. You can't actually read the discrepancies on here, but you can see what I've actually put. Now I can't read it because Sagacious Angels.
Yes, I got back and
message. Yeah, and nothing against Sagacious Angel. I appreciate your. Yeah, I've. Throughout the 13 years or 12 years that I was actually working on it, I've got lots of additions. I mean, I didn't stop, but at the time I did the graphic, I had 30 discrepancies that were questionable. And this isn't silly discrepancies. This isn't something that could be just put down to memory. I don't even bother with those discrepancies. But there are 30 discrepancies. And as I've put there, view them and ask for yourself why they started appearing 2 days before Madeleine disappeared. And, you know, once you've asked that question, it makes you think, well, is it because they were hiding something? Why would they all contradict each other back on Tuesday? If it was a normal holiday, you would expect, oh yeah, well, we all went to here, we did this, did that, and nothing. But no, it started Tuesday and it was pretty major. Most of those discrepancies, as I've mentioned, on the Thursday, how could two parents on the day their daughter died not remember who picked her up from the creche? I mean, that in itself, what does that tell you? I wish I could hear your answer, but I can't. But doesn't that tell you? And along with that, did Kate really walk up those stairs with 3 children and Jessie let her in the back doors? Or did she go through the front door like she said? Or did none of that happen because Madeleine wasn't there? I mean, this is the whole thing. We're working on a big puzzle scenario. And we're hearing this because supposedly Madeleine was still alive. If she wasn't alive, then that wouldn't have happened. And that might be the reason that they both contradicted each other, because if they were asked a question, what door did you go out of or come in from? They wouldn't have sorted them out between themselves. And that's why they both come up with different answers. You know, that's the kind of thing. It's far deeper than just reading the files. You have to look at them, compare the statements, and wonder, why do these two say different things? And I think that kind of tells you that something was odd. And they did that. I mean, as I say, so many different discrepancies that can't be answered. So I come up with the thoughts that this could only be down to one thing. And then another topic we're going to get into on another week, if you can stand it, is when was Madeleine last seen? I mean, I initially didn't go with the abduction. I figured something had happened on the Wednesday. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to guess a day. I thought, no, I'm going to look to see when I find a statement claiming when was Madeleine last seen that is credible and directly and specifically applies to Madeleine, not an I saw Madeleine, I'm talking about something very specific. I did not find one, as I mentioned last week, until Tuesday, when the tennis coach claimed she saw her. So I thought, okay, so nothing happened to Madeleine before Tuesday because the tennis coach saw her on Tuesday. So then when I went to her statement and I looked, and it said Madeleine was in a group of children. And I thought, okay, that doesn't specifically say Madeleine was there. She could have been reading off a logbook of when the Lobsters played tennis, or not played tennis because they were like 3 and 4, but when the Lobster, and she could have been reading that, yeah, Madeleine was on Tuesday. So then that wasn't for me proof that she actually saw Madeleine. And there was nothing for the Monday. And the last one I found was on the Sunday when the cleaner's daughter saw them going up the steps. They'd come out of their apartment. It was very specific that she saw Madeleine with her little shoes that had lights on them, holding some bread, going up to the Payne's apartment for lunch, which is what they all claimed they did because it was the biggest apartment. So that to me was a very, very credible statement. The only one and the last time that I can say that anybody actually saw Madeleine. So that was Sunday lunchtime. There was nothing for Monday and nothing for the rest of the week. Now, I specifically checked all of the nanny's statements. I have them all, and anybody that wants to see can see every single nanny statement that says, well, yeah, Madeleine was there, or nothing was specific to say they actually saw Madeleine. And as we know, and as I told you earlier, that Miguel Matias from the Paraiso, don't know how you say it, Paraiso bar down on the beach, he was absolutely believed 100% that he saw Madeleine dancing with her daddy. And as we know, we've got CCTV footage that Madeleine wasn't there, neither were the McCanns. So obviously the child that he saw dancing with her daddy was not Madeleine, and therefore very likely Madeleine looked very much like one of the other Tapas children. And I've already explained last week about the crash issue, but we'll get into that later. So no, nobody that I have found shows proof of seeing Madeleine after Sunday. So what does that mean? You know, what does that tell me? It tells me that something happened to her between Sunday when she was seen and Tuesday morning when they found it so necessary to start contradicting each other and not going to use the word, but basically we didn't hear the truth. I don't believe. So something happened between Sunday lunchtime and Tuesday morning. And that's what the files tell me, basically. So I don't know if anybody else feels the same. What do you think, Paul? Are you still there?
Did you say you were going to go into more depth on that in a different episode?
Yeah. Because okay. I've got a lot of the graphics because I think it's important if I'm going to claim something, it's important for me that I need to prove it. And I've got lots of graphics, which I've done using all the statements from everybody, all of the nannies, everybody else, so that people can see for themselves right on screen here that there was not one statement that proves, or in my opinion, I mean, somebody else might find one that they think proves that Madeleine was there. But to me, if somebody says it was Madeleine, that doesn't prove it was Madeleine. And especially the fact that Russell O'Brien's daughter was 3 months younger, had the same color hair, and went to the same crash. how do they know it wasn't her? You know, and the records weren't kept well in the creche. So, I mean, any of this registering, or it was not like a nursery where everything was very specific. It was a drop-in place. It was a babysitter's. You know, they dropped the kids off, picked them up at any time of day randomly. So there was no real records kept or anything. And often Catriona used to fill in the times. And so we will be having another topic on the creche issue, which back in the day, in the 3A's day, oh my golly, the creche questions, I think we had thousands and thousands and thousands of comments about the creche because they were so difficult to read. Now I've put them all into a graphic, and once you put them into a graphic and see them as they are, that's when I had the light bulb moment that looked like Jerry and Russell, or Kate, I don't know, arriving at the same time to either pick up or drop them off. Not every single time, but most times. And that's when I had the light bulb moment that is it possible that they both, Madeleine wasn't around, but they both arrived at the same time. And Russell sent his daughter in, and Jerry went in at the same time, maybe filled out the thing on the side. Nobody was checking probably. And Jerry walks in with Russell's daughter. So the following week when the nannies were interviewed, they'd say, yeah, we saw Jerry. We saw him with his daughter. You know, so that's what I'm saying. It's just seeing Madeleine is not proof. Just saying.
I think it's very difficult to confirm Catriona's events, and I think that Jerry may well have. Oh God, I'm putting myself out here now. I think he, because if you look at the fresh records, it was the kids were picked up by Kate McCann, Kate Healy. You know, you've got to look at that.
It changed, yeah. Yeah, she did change. And I think once you see the graphic I made, which I mentioned last week, took me 2 days, and I looked at it and thought, why did I bother doing that? And then when I looked at it again and started seeing all these little issues, there's lots of little issues, which obviously I'm not going to go into right now, but there's lots of little issues that stand out, because when we saw the crash records up until when I did this graphic, they are all over the place. You have no idea what you know. You'd have to have a tremendous memory to remember who did what and where. But on this graphic, which I thought I regretted doing because it was a pain in the neck, nearly said something else there, and I'm so glad I did it, because it brought everything together. I looked at it and I had a light bulb moment, and I absolutely believe that if something happened to Madeleine during that week, and I want to claim that something happened to Madeleine during that week that I believe, then it's my responsibility to explain how they got away with deceiving the creche into thinking, and the nannies into thinking she was there. And that was important to me, because how could I claim my belief that something happened earlier and yet say, well, I don't know how they got away with everybody seeing her supposedly at the creche. How did it happen? When I looked at that graphic and I had a light bulb moment, and I thought, oh my goodness, they arrived and at the same time, even though they were doing different things, they arrived at the same time. And I absolutely believe that that's how they managed it, was to both arrive at the same time, send in Russell's daughter, and Jerry walk in and chat to the nannies. And then the nannies would from then on believe they saw Jerry with his daughter. I mean, you can poo-poo that, but pardon?
I completely agree.
It was a light bulb moment, and that only came to me, I think, about 2 years ago. This wasn't something that came to me years ago. I'd done those crash records, thinking regrettably, because I mean, if you look at them, you'll understand why. But just a graphic, and it's quite a big one. But it just brought everything clear to me. It just showed me. And when I saw it, I was doing it. It came to me while I was doing a post in Complete Mystery of Madeleine McCann. And if you want a really good forum to go to, then please go there. Jill Haven is the admin there. And I've done a lot of work in there, but unfortunately, I haven't managed to keep up with anything lately. But yeah, so go there and check it out. And I was doing a post, and it came to me while I was doing a post. I mean, what can I say? It wasn't contrived. I didn't go to make something fit. It just came to me. So that was major for me, because it is my responsibility. If I'm going to claim that something happened earlier, I need to explain what happened, how they managed to deceive the crash. So that was really good for me. But I'm sure it's about time to wrap up now. I think that, oh my golly, can't believe
2 hours, 17 minutes. You've done well tonight.
Oh, don't, Maureen. I mean, I get embarrassed.
It's just riveting. I've just been listening.
I look back and I said to my kids, I can't believe I spoke for an hour and a half. And now what am I doing? 2 hours? Oh my goodness.
Try 5.
And to be honest, it could probably go a lot more, because I've got quite a few questions, but we can wait and do them next week. But just so you know, there's a lot of questions. So
what if I mean, I'll leave it up to Maureen. I think probably it's good to maybe it's good to close, but we'll keep those questions,
not to overload the head all at once.
And keep them and answer them next week. Is that okay with everybody if we do that?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah. But I just wanted to know that people are definitely interested, and there's a lot of questions. So
Thank you, Lizzie.
Thank you, Paula, for coming on panel.
You're welcome.
I've just seen a bit of the chat. There's Carrie posting links away.
I know, she beat me to it again.
That's what I said. She's been doing it like a pro. She's right in there.
She's great, yeah. And this is the thing, we're limited on here. I'd really love to be able to just show you these whichever graphic, but I looked to choose a few graphics for tonight, and first of all I gave Maureen about 5 or 6, and then I went through and I got to about 50 more, and I thought, no, I cannot do it. I've got probably close to 1,000 graphics that I have done on individual topics, different things like the ones I showed you tonight. And it's just, there is no way. And that's why this for me is so great, because after the 13 years that I've been doing this, all the stuff that I've got in my head, which has been sat there all this time, and I've only been able to get it out in little dribs and drabs, but to do this, and that's probably where the crikey 2.5 hours on one topic. Oh my goodness, jeez. I think it's time, yes, and next week, unless there's a really important, unless there's somebody who really needs an answer this week, then Shirley will. Thank you, Shirley. Would be glad to make note of them, and we'll deal with them next week, if that's okay. Just so you can get a break. Jeez.
Yeah.
So, okay then. So I'll hand it back to you, Maureen.
Well, yes.
Bit.
I'll just pop the graphic up of the 2 groups that we're promoting this week. And thank you, everybody, for coming, putting your questions forward, Lizzie answering them. Thanks to Shirley and my mods for taking care of everything. And we'll see you again next Saturday. Night,
Okay.
night.
It's good night from me, and thank you so much for your lovely comments. And I don't mind if they're not all. I'm just happy. So thank you so much, everyone.
Good night.